What do you know about muscle wagons? Have you heard about them? These aren't your typical grocery getters or soccer mom shuttles. No, we're talking about full-blown, tire-smoking, V8-powered beasts that just happen to have enough room in the back for the kids, the dog, and probably your neighbor's lawnmower. There's just something so absolutely awesome about taking a family-friendly station wagon, stuffing a massive engine under the hood, and turning it into a straight-up powerhouse. It's like putting a rocket engine on a minivan. It makes no sense, but at the same time it makes total sense. And while the Germans might be the kings of high-performance wagons today, let's not forget that back in the muscle car era, the Americans were pumping out some seriously wild V8 wagons of their own. Gas was cheap, horsepower was everywhere, and automakers figured, hey, why not throw a big block V8 in a wagon and call it a day? And that's exactly what they did. Now, these beasts are few and far between, but they're absolute legends in the car world. So get ready because we're about to take a look at 5 of the most insane American muscle wagons ever made. Whether you're into Chevys, Fords, or even Mopars, there's something here for every gearhead. Let's roll. Number 5. The 1973 Chevelle 454 SS Wagon. Alright, let's kick things off with a wagon that's as rare as it is badass. Now, most people stopped paying attention to the Chevelle after the 1972 model year. Probably because that's when it got its big, chunky bumpers that kind of shifted the vibe. But here's the thing. Those big bumper Chevelles were still packing some serious heat, and the 1973 SS Wagon was no exception. On the surface, it looks like your typical 70s family hauler, plenty of room for the kids, a rear-facing jump seat for some extra fun, and enough trunk space for all the camping gear. But pop the hood, and you're staring at a beastly 454 cubic inch turbojet V8. That's right, this family wagon came with an engine that pumped out 245 horsepower and almost 400 foot-pound of torque, which for the early 70s was still pretty impressive. Now, most of these SS wagons came with a 3-speed automatic transmission, but if you were one of the lucky few, you could get it with a super rare 4-speed manual. Yep, a manual muscle wagon. Just imagine cruising around with your family, groceries in the back, and then dropping it into 4th to leave some rubber on the pavement. I mean, what's cooler than that? Here's where it gets even more wild. Chevy didn't make a ton of these. In fact, only about 70 of the 454-powered SS wagons ever rolled off the assembly line. And we have no clue how many of those came with the manual transmission. So, if you ever see one of these out in the wild, consider yourself lucky because it's practically a unicorn. Despite the big bumpers and heavier chassis, this thing could still haul, pun intended. And while it might not be as famous as the earlier Chevelle, the 1973 SS Wagon still earned its stripes in the muscle car world. A family hauler with the heart of a street machine, what's not to love? If you thought a 454-powered Chevelle wagon was wild, wait till you hear about the next one. We're dialing it back to the late 50s, to a car that not only set new standards for style, but also brought fuel injection into the world of wagons. That's right, folks. Next up is a wagon that's as iconic as it gets. Number 4. The 1957 fuel-injected Nomad. Now, when it comes to classic wagons, the Chevrolet Nomad is practically royalty. Its sleek, low-slung design, especially with those iconic 2 doors, was miles ahead of anything else on the road at the time. Launched in 1955 as part of Chevy's legendary Tri-5 lineup, the Nomad instantly stood out. It was the perfect blend of station wagon utility and sports car styling. A true game-changer. But things got even more interesting in 1957. Chevy decided to drop in something revolutionary under the hood, a fuel-injected 283 cubic inch V8. This wasn't just some ordinary engine either. We're talking about a motor that cranked out 283 horsepower, which for the math geeks out there, meant it was achieving the golden 1 horsepower per cubic inch rule, a huge deal back then. And here's the kicker. This wasn't a stripped-down bare-bones car. Oh no, the Nomad came decked out with all the bells and whistles of the top-tier Corvette. That meant you got the same ramjet fuel injection system that was straight-up cutting edge at the time. Whether you went with the smooth 3-speed automatic or the more engaging 4-speed manual transmission, the Nomad was an absolute rocket for its era. But like most great things, it didn't last long. Only a few of these fuel-injected Nomads were built, making them some of the rarest GM wagons to this day. If you happen to stumble upon one at a car auction, brace yourself, because prices for these bad boys can skyrocket into the six-figure range. The Nomad wasn't just a wagon. It was a style icon, a technological leap forward, and a serious performer. Even today, it's one of the most sought-after cars from the 50s. So if you ever get the chance to see one in person, take a minute to appreciate the innovation and sheer cool factor that this fuel-injected wagon brought to the table. As Chevy was pushing boundaries with fuel injection, Ford had its eyes on something bigger, much bigger. We're talking about a wagon that could fit the whole family and still have enough power to go toe-to-toe with any muscle car on the block. Number 3, the 428 and 429 powered Ford Country Squire. When Chevrolet rolled out their 454 Chevelle SS Wagon, Ford couldn't just sit back and watch. They had to answer. And boy, did they ever. Their response was the Ford Ltd Country Squire, a full-sized family cruiser that wasn't afraid to throw down with the big boys. This wasn't your average wagon for a Sunday picnic. Under that wood-paneled exterior, Ford had tucked away some serious power. Let's start with the engine options. From 1966 to 1968, you could get this beast with a 428 cubic inch V8 that pumped out a hefty 345 horsepower. That's more than enough to haul the kids, the groceries, and maybe even your neighbor's boat. And in 1969, Ford decided to up the ante by switching to the 429 cubic inch V8, which put down anywhere between 320 to 360 horsepower, depending on which version you got. But here's where it gets really fun. The Country Squire wasn't just powerful, it had style. We're talking about that iconic wood paneling on the sides, a look that screams classic Americana. You see one of these rolling down the street and it's hard not to picture it pulling up to the beach, surfboard strapped to the roof. Except in this case, it's got enough torque to pull a small mountain. Now, while most of these wagons came with an automatic transmission, there's a super rare version of the 428 that was fitted with a 4-speed manual transmission. Yup, you could actually row your own gears in this land yacht. Ford only made one of these 428 4-speed wagons, making it one of the rarest muscle wagons ever built. Try to imagine blasting through the gears in a car that could seat 8 people. That's next-level cool. And let's not forget the practicality. With bench seats up front, a rear-facing third row, and fold-down seats in the back, this was the kind of wagon that could pack in the whole family and still have room for luggage. It wasn't just fast. It was functional, making it a true sleeper hit. Today, while some of the ultra-rare versions are hard to find, the Country Squire is still a relatively affordable entry into the world of muscle wagons. You might even spot one at a classic car show or up for sale if you're lucky. Now, if you're still catching your breath from the sheer size and power of the Country Squire, hang on tight, because this next wagon didn't just haul groceries, it hauled serious horsepower. Buick may be known for its luxury, but in the early 70s they were also in the business of building bruisers. Number 2, the 1970 Buick Estate Wagon. Picture this. It's 1970 and Buick decides to take their already massive estate wagon and drop in a 455 cubic inch V8. Now, this wasn't some puny engine, it was a true performance motor, cranking out a staggering 370 horsepower and a gut-punching 500 foot-pound of torque. That's right, Buick took their cushy, plush wagon and gave it the heart of a muscle car. Let's not forget, this wasn't a lightweight vehicle. The Buick Estate Wagon was a full-on land yacht built on GM's B-body platform, which it shared with the Impala and other big Chevys of the time. But that 455 made sure this wagon wasn't just cruising around at grandma's speed. It had the power to surprise anyone foolish enough to underestimate it. The best part? Buick didn't cut corners when it came to comfort and luxury. This wagon had it all: power brakes, power windows, and even a Posey traction rear axle to help manage all that torque. You could take this car on long road trips with the family and still leave black marks on the pavement when the opportunity arose. It was the perfect mix of refinement and raw power. What's really wild is that this powerhouse of a wagon was available for only 1 year. That's right, Buick only offered the 455 in the estate wagon for the 1970 model year, making it a true unicorn in the world of muscle wagons. By the next year, Buick had moved the estate wagon onto the larger C-body platform, which was shared with Cadillacs. So, 1970 was the one and only year you could get this B-body wagon with that insane 455 under the hood. But don't worry, Buick built over 20,000 of these wagons in 1970, so while they're rare, you can still find one out there today. And the best part? Compared to other muscle wagons, these are still relatively affordable. You can snag one and own a piece of muscle car history without breaking the bank. So we've covered some absolute giants of the muscle wagon world so far, but now it's time to wrap things up with a true icon from the Mopar family. If you're a fan of big block V8s, 4-speed manuals, and enough torque to uproot a tree, this next one's going to hit home. Number 1, the 383 4-speed Dodge Coronet and Plymouth Belvedere wagons. You just knew there had to be a Mopar in this list, right? Well, here we are, and boy, does this one deliver. Dodge and Plymouth didn't just dabble in the muscle wagon world. They went all in with the 383 4-speed wagons. While Ford and Chevy were doing their thing, Dodge and Plymouth snuck some serious heat under the hoods of their family-friendly wagons. The Dodge Coronet and Plymouth Belvedere wagons may have looked like your typical station wagons on the outside, but under the hood you'd find the mighty 383 cubic-inch V8. This engine put out 300 horsepower and came paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, a true rarity for wagons of that era. In fact, finding a factory 4-speed wagon from Dodge or Plymouth is like finding a needle in a haystack. Mopar enthusiasts know just how special these cars are. While exact production numbers are hard to pin down, it's estimated that fewer than 100 factory-built 383 4-speed wagons were ever made between 1964 and 1972. That's right, less than 100. These wagons weren't just rare, they were seriously fast. With 300 horsepower at your disposal and a well-timed clutch dump, you could roast the rear tires, even with a full load of kids and groceries in the back. Talk about the ultimate sleeper. One of the rarest of the bunch was a 1971 Dodge Coronet Crestwood, which popped up for sale about 8 years ago. It's practically a unicorn in the muscle car world. If you ever come across one of these, you're looking at a piece of Mopar history. An unsung hero that blended family practicality with muscle car performance in a way that no one saw coming. These Mopar wagons may not have had the flashiest exteriors, but the raw power lurking underneath more than made up for it. Plus, their rarity has turned them into coveted collector's items. If you've ever dreamed of owning a classic Mopar with a stick shift, these 383 powered wagons should be on your radar, if you can even find one. And there you have it. 5 of the rarest American muscle wagons ever built. These wagons prove that practicality and performance don't have to be mutually exclusive. And that's why I love them. Which is your favorite? Let's know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more awesome automobile content. Until next time, bye-bye.